You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Jerome Corsi. Today is Wednesday. It's October 8th, 2025. Thank you for joining us here on CorsiNation.com. And we've got quite a bit to cover today. You can follow me on X at Corsi Jerome 1. CORSIJEROME, the number 1. On Substack, you can get me at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. Okay, the first thing I want to cover today is that gold is now over $4,000 an ounce. And those of you who have been watching the show regularly know I predicted that gold weeks ago. I predicted gold would be over $4,000 before the end of the year. It's only October, beginning of October, and gold is now at $4,052.90. And silver's at $49.18. Now, this is a phenomenon right now, because gold, when I started really talking about it, was $1,800 an ounce. And when I said back then it would be over $2,000 an ounce, everybody said that's crazy. I mean, I've been predicting this for a long time. That's why Swiss America is so important. And it's really a facility we're providing for you on the Corsi Nation website that you just got to visit, because you got to start educating yourself about what's happening in terms of the dollar and the weakening purchasing power of the dollar. Now, if you go to the Swiss America tab, the gold tab at the top of the Corsi Nation page, and Chris is showing you here now how to navigate to it, you can see the Walking Liberty $half offer. These are coins that are almost pure silver. We don't make them that way anymore. We make coins that are worthless in terms of their metal quality. They feel cheap. They look cheap. The dollars and the coins that used to be minted by the United States government were real metal. Now, that's why these are valuable. And Swiss America, for a one-time offer for somebody who's a new customer once, gets 250 of these at the price really of what they're worth in terms of silver, not very much more. It's really a lost leader for Swiss America. All you have to do is fill out the form. Chris will scroll down and show you the form. They're beautiful coins. They're circulated coins. They're not uncirculated. So they're not numismatic value, but they are valuable for their silver. So fill out the form on the Corsi Nation website. Chris is showing you how to do it. And talk to Swiss America, the consultative selling. By the way, say, oh, well, gold's at $4,000 an ounce. I can't buy an ounce of gold. We can buy a fraction. You can buy a small piece of gold, okay, some grams of gold. At least you've got some gold. And the silver is available. The silver is really much cheaper. It's still under $50. It won't be there for long. I'm telling you that silver is going to be over $100, and it'll double faster than gold. So you don't have to have a lot of money in order to benefit from this current cycle. And I was warning everybody about this. If you get a copy of the free book, which is on the website, I've written this quite a while ago, but I saw it coming, how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. It's happening. I wrote this with Dean Heskin. Just call toll-free 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Write it down. You've got to talk to Swiss America. This is not going to stop. It's going to continue to go higher and higher with gold and silver. Okay, and if you read this book, you'll get the inside track. You'll get the inside view of how the economy works. So you can track the economy and be able to see it like I see it. 1-800, write this down, 1-800-519-6268. Call Swiss America today. I'm imploring you to do it. Okay, so now the big story today, I think, is number one. There's a couple of big stories. The number one that dominated yesterday was that Senator Grassley revealed this FBI internal memo that showed that 8 sitting senators were they went to AT&T, the U.S. Department of Justice under Biden, to monitor 8 Republican senators. Now, this caused a huge uproar, okay, because it's absolutely becoming clear that the Obama and Biden weaponized the federal government to go after their enemies. Who were their enemies? Anybody who was not a globalist, lying Democrat, globalist, and hate America, woke. I don't know why the Democratic Party yet exists or why people are still voting for Democrats. And it's, to me, the polls are rigged. But the point is, let's listen to a little bit of this press conference from Grassley, Senator Grassley, who revealed this, and it's shocking because they've got to get a subpoena. They got to go to AT&T. They monitor U.S. senators who are sitting senators, and they bury the report. Okay, let's go ahead and play that a little bit.
Solicitation of these telephone records, which I think emphasizes the political weaponization that was behind all this effort. And we're still getting more information, but we've released some records today, and I'll let Senator Johnson take over from here, and then each one of you colleagues can join in when you want to, whatever you want to say.
Oh, first of all, I want to thank Senator Grassley. It is because of his relentless advocacy for whistleblowers that a lot of this information is surfacing right now. We wouldn't know about the list of 100 Republican entities that were targeted by Jack Smith's Arctic Frost investigation. I don't think we know about this as well. So we need whistleblowers. I think Dan Bongino and other folks in the FBI, they don't know where all the records are hidden. They still don't. They're not necessarily getting 100% cooperation. But this is outrageous what has happened. I just want to give you a timeline of this. I think you've already got the FBI sheet that shows the number of members of Congress that were targeted. Representative Kelly, Senators Graham, Hagerty, Hawley, Sullivan, Tuberville, myself, Senator Lummis, and Blackburn. This memo was dated September of 2023. To put it all into context, the Mar-a-Lago raid occurred in August of 2022. Jack Smith announced the indictments against President Trump in August of 2023. So this is almost 2 months later. They're casting this net, this fishing expedition against members of the Senate and the House.
Let's stop it right there. That's good enough. We've got the story here, Chris. This is a big story, and what we're finding, it is coming to light that what we had here was a coup d'état. I want to pull my book for a minute. In 2020, I wrote this book, Coup d'etat. Now, what I was saying was that Obama had conducted a coup d'etat, and he has. Now, we know this. They concocted the Russian collusion theory. So the criminals here, they made it up, and they took the lies from the Steele dossier into the FISA court to get wiretapping and Carter Page and others. Okay, and then they wanted to indict me, saying I lied to them, the Mueller grand jury, Herr Mueller, who is, by the way, mentally incompetent, they say these days, so he can't be held responsible for his crimes. What I was told during my investigation, when the FBI and the Mueller investigations were with me, that I was told that Weissman was running the Russian collusion thing, and Mueller was over there in a bar drinking his guts out every day, all day long, while living in luxury hotels at government expense. Meanwhile, his thugs, Jack Smith, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, the Lovebirds, were going after anything that wanted to represent America. The Democrat Party has gone not only communist, it's gone anarchist. So, Chris, show the book. I mean, this book is now mandatory that you read, which is The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. I've been writing about this for years, warning everybody that the Democratic Party was going to go globalist, that they were the tool of the globalists. And what they want to do is they want to take over power. They want power. They want to be totalitarian. Okay, so that Marxism transformed into this cultural Maoism, attack on the culture, which started with Gramsci, Italian in prison, out of his mind, writing this rubbish about how he hated anything good about God and family is in prison. And so what they want is anarchist nihilism, and it ends up in Antifa. Now, so the Democrats are now big supporters of Antifa, okay, which is an organization dedicated to chaos, burning. What the Democrats do when they lose elections, and there's some good articles surfacing right now on this. The Democrats, when they lose an election, they say that it was anti-democratic. First of all, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. We're not a democracy. And the Democrats are always pleading, well, we have to vote for us because it's democratic. No, it's not democratic. It's totalitarian. They want to control you. They want to put you in a communist state. They want to kill you. And that's the problem, is that we have gotten, and if you don't understand the philosophy behind this, why they've done the global warming craze, because they wanted to stop using hydrocarbon fuels so billions of people would die, because they're depopulationists. They want to set up their own Ubermensch, Nietzsche kind of society where they're the transhumans, transgenders. And they live forever because they can do organ harvesting. These people are deeply, deeply deranged and evil. Okay, so when you've got AOC leading the Democratic Party and Chuck Schumer with the shutdown, the American people got to realize that Donald Trump is essentially saving the nation. Now you get polls out saying, oh, the American people don't like to have the military the Democrats don't like the military in the cities because the Democrats don't want the criminals arrested. They don't want the illegals rounded up. Finally, DHS is putting postage into the airports telling illegal immigrants how to self-deport and get out of here. Otherwise, they're going to be hunted down. If the military has to do it, the military will. But we need to clean this country up. We don't want to become Europe. The EU is failing. The EU is in a nosedive. So, we have to look at little articles. There's a very good article, an American thinker by a guy I've followed for a long time, which is J.B. Shirk. I interacted with, I got to know him back in the days of the birth certificate examination. And he does a lot of writing on American Thinker. Now, what he's pointing out, he looked at these Moldovan elections. The elections were, Moldova is between Ukraine and Romania. So he points out, it started by the nation of Georgia, which part of the former Russian Federation, held elections last weekend, and the EU candidates won 80% of the votes, and immediately pro-EU rioters attempted to invade the presidential palace and overthrow the government. Militants, branding the anti-EU candidates won 80% of the vote, anti-EU. So the EU rioters then take over the palace, presidential palace, and overthrow the government. And they wave brand new EU flags, European Union, as they set government buildings on fire. Security services located weapons and explosives hidden away for use during the insurrection. The Georgian government officially accused Brussels of inciting riots, attempting a coup d'etat. Okay, well, what Schruck says is that the story doesn't get a lot of attention here in the United States because Western sources describe these insurrectionists as pro-democracy protesters because they're EU lovers, EU paid. Okay, so it's become an established pattern over the last 15 years. This is Schruck writing. When leftist globalists lose elections, they work to overthrow legitimately elected governments in the name of democracy. That happened in Ukraine, 2014, with the Maidan rebellion. That's George Soros. And by the way, this whole issue of going after the funding of Antifa, it's time to bring George Soros to justice. He's done more damage than anybody I can think of to destroy all that's good about America. This guy hates America. This guy's satanic in his view. He'll fund getting the prisoners out of jails because saying that there's too many blacks arrested, and it's racist. Everything's racist. Okay, so now they can't blame global warming anymore, so they blame Russia. So Russia, 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 Russia. Everything's blamed on Putin. Okay, so a week before the Georgian elections, Moldova held national elections, former Soviet republic between Ukraine and Romania. It's a highly contested state for NATO that the EU wants to control. So, from the perspective of Western observers, last week's elections in Moldova, Moldova, went the right way because the pro-EU party won a parliamentary majority. And so, therefore, the European Commission under President Ursula von der Leyen celebrated by telling Moldovians, you made your choice clear. Europe, democracy, freedom, no slavery. And what they did in Moldova was they banned the anti-EU candidates from running. Okay, very similar to what our weaponized Department of Justice was doing to conservatives, to anybody they hated, Christians, aging Catholics who liked the Latin Mass, weren't LGBT, Pope Francis. Okay, their agenda is all about control. That's what that book shows you. But they're nihilists. They can only destroy. They can't create. Okay, and if you don't understand that, it's fundamental to understanding the biblical roots of all this insanity, where Satan says God doesn't exist. God's dead, they say. Follow us. We know how to make this place work. We hate God, and God rules where Satan says, have the power over earth. And thank you for making human beings, because we'll get them to join with us, God, and they'll turn on you. Sin's a lot more fun for human beings, not what you want them to do. Why should we all praise you, God? That's what Satan says. Okay, well, it's also what the Democratic Party is saying. The Democratic Party is now having a shutdown of the government so they can do LGBT money spending all over the world, promoting anti-American activities. The government needs to be shut down. It's time for Trump to start firing people. Also, I'm going to write an article this week. I've written 2 articles. I'm going to start. I write on American Thinker. That's one of the places where you can read what I'm writing these days. Epic Times said, no, I'm too controversial to write on Epic Times. They don't want me. I said, why don't I start writing for you guys? Oh, no, Dr. Corsi, you're too controversial. Yeah, well, Epic Times is becoming irrelevant. Fulong Gong. And I mean, I'm just deeply disappointed. They've lost a lot of their good editorial staff. And the point is, there's excellent reporting around on the internet. If you follow what sites I follow, the Liberty Daily, Gateway Pundit, the Conservative Treehouse. Conservative Treehouse is running 2 very good stories right now about how Senators Johnson and Schmidt, notice how the FBI does not follow the separation of power constitutional procedures, because this Operation Arctic Frost enabled them to go after sitting members of Congress. Okay, so if the FBI does not have to follow the rules, Jack Smith, these Democrats think that if they, in their agenda to impose this dark satanic view upon us, of gender change, of anything you believe is okay, immigrants coming into the country, free the prisons, open the prisons, support the Venezuelan terrorists, open the border to fentanyl, let Chinese communists money launder billions into their coffers. It's all about money and power. The Democrats are power hungry for their dark, evil agenda. Okay, now, the other thing that I think is going to have to happen here is Donald Trump is going to be pushing for peace both in the Middle East and Ukraine. I think he's going to get peace in the Middle East. And I think I'll write another article this week about Netanyahu should step down. It's time for him to step down. The attack he did in Qatar was a bad mistake. And Trump pissed off on it. He wasn't consulted. It's expanding the war going after Hamas. Now, I think Netanyahu better understand that Donald Trump will support Israel, but Donald Trump wants peace. And so, therefore, pressing the war in Gaza at this point is maybe beyond international tolerance. Now, Hamas has not released the hostages yet, and Hamas is determined to destroy Israel. So they're extremely difficult to deal with because all they do is view every concession as affirming their October 7th attack. Say, oh, we don't care that the Palestinians got killed, Hamas will say. There are stooges. We're only to destroy and kill Jews. And with the invasion of Islam into Europe, Europe is now close to beyond repair. France is ungovernable, but yet Macron wants to stay in power with his wife, who may be a man. Okay, the insanity we're dealing with in the world has got to come to an end. And the Democratic Party must not be permitted to win another election. Okay, now, Chris, go to God's Five Stones. And I'm also getting in print another very important article in that we had an election decision in Wisconsin. A local judge in Wisconsin decided that non-citizens can't vote in elections in Wisconsin, demanded the end to motor voter. Okay, the motor voter scheme, the Democrats can cheat, lie, steal. It's unbelievable to me where the Democratic Party has descended to. The AOC, they don't have a reason to exist. If it weren't for the mainstream media parroting their lies, the Democrats would be nowhere. And by the way, Larry Ellison took over CBS. And of course, the Democrats are screaming. Jeffrey Tobin is losing his head. He's the guy who exposed himself masturbating on a Zoom call and was disgraced for a while until they made him go sit in the corner for a while, and then he's back on air. He did a hit piece on me in the New Yorker when I was under the gun with Mueller. And I'll tell you, as soon as that came out and he was fired, I thought to myself, that SOB, deserves it in terms of who he really is and what the moral character of these people are. And is AOC married to her brother? These are the kinds of questions that need to be investigated. And Kash Patel over on the conservative treehouse is saying that he is finally gutting as best he can, cleaning out the corrupt DC-based FBI officials. The best thing to do would be to fire them all and start over again. But yet you've got Todd Blanche, put a picture of Todd Blanche, who's Department of Justice, and he's Deputy Attorney General, and he told Pam Blondie, just go home, Pam Blondie. Running the Department of Justice, Pam, is a little hard for you. You can't run a big organization. I'll take care of it for you. You just go back to your office in Miami and do press conferences. So this guy wormed his way into Donald Trump's inner circle by supporting him as a lawyer when Donald Trump was under the gun with all these prosecutions. And that was, again, part of the FBI's determination. But the FBI is yet so corrupt, they will not prosecute Letitia James for the mortgage fraud, which my good friend Joel Gilbert so brilliantly exposed. So Todd Blanche is making sure there's been no pardon since he took over. Tina Peters, he wants her kept in jail. He doesn't want any voter ID executive order, but there's one coming. And he doesn't want the J6ers compensated. This guy is a dark, evil force, and Donald Trump better wise up and get rid of him. Kash Patel, Pam Blondie. I thought, Pam, you were in touch with this organization. Why are you letting this guy destroy Donald Trump's agenda? Okay, so first thing about Washington is this. When anybody's talking to you in Washington, I advise people, assume the person's lying. Okay, now, all your question is, why are they lying? What do they want? especially when they tell you they support you. People come to you and tell you they support you in Washington. You support me, prove it. So far, this guy has done nothing. We're getting nothing out of the FBI. We're not getting any indictments. Where are the indictments of Clapper? And Comey is one, but Comey may just be the poster child indictment. Let's see if it goes anywhere. Okay, he's supposed to be now indicted maybe today or this week, but they stop there. What about the coup d'etat conspiracy? Okay, the conspiracy does not have a statute of limitations because treason has no statute of limitations. So, Clapper and Comey, they think, oh, we're only going to be charged with lying to Congress. We'll get out of that because everybody lies to Congress and nobody gets punished for it. That's what they think. Okay, so again, the corruption at the Democratic Party seeking power, this is not the party of Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy would have had nothing to do with this party. It's the party of Lyndon Johnson, who passed civil rights legislation saying, well, these blacks will now vote for us for 100 years. While he was breaking up families with the Aid to Families with Dependent Children program, destroying the backbone of the black community, which was through the 1940s, 1950s was God, religion, and family. What held the black community together through slavery, through the post-Civil War era of repression, and the black family survived right up until the Democratic Party under Lyndon Johnson wrecked it. And he did it for power. Okay, I say Trump understands New York. In New York, the currency is money. Got money, you've got power. You're a billionaire in New York, you're king. Donald Trump understands that game. In Washington, it's the other way around. People want power so they get money. You're a senator, they're going to show up at your door and they're going to offer you all kinds of money to support their lobbying effort, to take money from China, Mitch McConnell, and Elon Chow, Chinese family worth a lot of money. Think that family be alive today if, in fact, Mitch McConnell wasn't doing their bidding, the communist Chinese. But, of course, don't worry about it. Biden and Obama opened the border with Honduras, who's president at the time, was part of the Sinaloa drug cartel. A guy named Hernandez. He went to prison for drug dealing. They opened the border to child sex trade. They opened the border to fentanyl, cocaine. And Sean Taylor, I'm going to bring Sean Taylor onto the program next week, and we're going to start talking with Sean Taylor about his investigation. Grassley and the others were calling for whistleblowers to come forward. Well, let's bring them all forward. Let's give them some airtime. So, Chris, let's get Sean Taylor on the show, maybe even twice next week. Let's have everybody see what's going on. I'm going to start writing articles about the massive money laundering that's occurring in America. Okay, I want to cover one or two more stories. And Chris, I'm going to cover one more here, and I want then you to come on and we'll have a little conversation about it. But the this deranged Jack Smith, whom Trump was pounding yesterday on this bombshell memo on Arctic frost, he deserves to be investigated and prosecuted. Okay, because the Biden FBI spied on Republican senators during the Arctic frost investigation into election conspiracy, which they are blaming on the Russians, a story they knew was a lie and they concocted. Okay, Josh Hawley was investigated. Marsha Blackburn was investigated. Tommy Tuberville was investigated. Lindsey Graham was investigated. I'm not a big fan of Lindsey Graham, but the FBI has no right to be wiretapping him. Okay, so we're seeing over here on Zero Hedge one or two stories that are really worth commenting on. Okay, the head of Antifa fled the United States and is hiding in Sweden. So after the Trump administration designated the Rose City, Portland, Oregon as the Antifa, there's a terrorist group. The founder, Johan Victorin, showed up in Sweden, fled. So the founders of Rose City Antifa are Caroline Victorin and Johan Victorin. They fled to Sweden after forming the violent militant group in Portland, Oregon years ago. Okay, so the Rose City Antifa has gone underground since around 2021, fearing conspiracy charges. Andy No is following it. I want Chris to just take a look at this one, Chris, and then come on and we'll talk about it. Because Antifa is the enforcement arm of the Democratic Party. I want you to show this here. This is what the X there from. I'll just put it in the chat so we can bring that up. Andy No, and he does great reporting on Antifa. Well, isn't that a sweet, loving couple from Portland, Oregon? These are the founders of Antifa, and they fled. They don't want to go to prison. They want to be able to destroy America, do violence, burn buildings. And they were part of the conspiracy when in 2020, it ends up with Antifa destroying Portland, Oregon, and General Milley unwilling to enforce the Insurrection Act to stop all the violence from, George Floyd. Another lying Democratic story. Okay, so this again is an important story. And Antifa, who funds Antifa? There's the criminals, George Soros. Who funds? What are you criminals doing? And how much money from China gets laundered through our banks to go into Act Blue, which is taking money from the border child sex trade, organ harvesting, and gets into mortgage fraud, where the head of Antifa, the head of Act Blue, which is the cousin to Antifa, funding Antifa with the money from the border that was brought in by Obama and Biden through Honduras, the agreement made. Then the head of Act Blue buys $1 million property in Palo Alto, house, and gets a $50 million mortgage loan on it. Nice if you can do it. That's not a mortgage loan. It shows up in LexisNexis as a transaction, but doesn't show up in the deed. So, Chris, let's have a little bit of dialogue on this, and then we're getting ready to wrap up.
Oh, there we go. The camera's working now.
Good.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. They start Antifa. These LARPers start Antifa in
And
Rose
LARPers,
City.
live action role
Role
players.
players. Yeah, LARPers.
Yeah.
Live action.
In other
role
words, they're
players.
paid protesters for the Democratic Party.
Well, yeah, but like live action role players are people like young basement dwellers who go to Renaissance fairs and reenact just for fun, or they dress up
Right.
in costumes and play around. That's what they're doing. They think this is a big video game until they get hurt, or until somebody designates them as a terrorist organization and they run off with all sorts of money that came into them. Where do they get the money, by the way, to just run off to Sweden? Is anybody asking that question?
Yeah, these are good. And there's another story out today that Germany has dropped its opposition to the EU chat control. So the Signal, which is leading encrypted messenger service, issued a dire warning in Europe, saying that the EU is pretty soon going to be able to get everything off your cell phone, all your pictures, everything you're doing, all your friends, everything so that Germany is on the verge of a catastrophic about face, reversing its longstanding and principled opposition to the EU's chat control proposal, which, if passed, could spell the end of privacy in Europe. They can know everything about you, and like the thought police in Great Britain, if you post a post and say something nasty about Islam, the police show up at your door. And if you don't recant it, you get called to the station. And pretty soon you'll be imprisoned because you dared to oppose Islam, which is openly now saying in Europe that they're to take over Europe and impose Sharia law. And they are the rulers of Europe. The Christians don't belong there. Chris, what do you think?
Oh, I'm there as well. Germany, though, keep an eye on them. Their chancellor, Fred Merz, which I love that name. It's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Fred Merz. Anyway, he's the Germans. The Germans are like a lot of the other Western European nations. The globalists are trying to do what they can to keep the power that they're losing. And this goes as far as obviously trying to ban the AFD party, the fast-growing AFD party, is censoring free speech. This whole idea of getting rid of that or stopping, maybe it's like throwing a bone to the anti-censorship crowd over there, because the government's going to control what's going on the internet. They're going to do their best to do so. They're going to be as far. They're going to go as far as Britain pretty soon, knocking on people's doors for a kid merely looking at a post. Did you see that video?
Yeah,
With the two police women in Britain?
yeah. Do you have it to show? I mean, we're running out of time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's an old one. It's from like a few
Yeah.
weeks ago. But they, but this is what's going on in Europe right now.
Well, also, I want to kind of end with this and can comment on it, Chris. The European Central Bank is accelerating their push for the digital euro. Okay,
Right.
so they want digital money, and pretty soon they're going to have digital ID, and pretty soon you're going to have the mark of the beast required. You know, you'll have to have your health passport to travel, which means you'll have to, comply with all their regulations of everything, and they'll be scrutinizing everything on your cell phone. Your cell phone is going to be made into a surveillance device. What do you think?
It's not like the Germans and many people here, as a matter of fact, in America, aren't connected to the government through a central bank or two, if anything. But at this point, using digital currency, especially in the free world, the governments are going to be able to monitor everything you do, every transaction you make, even the really small ones. The gig economy is going to go crazy. Then you have the other issue where, like you said, the government, if you wind up engaging in wrong thing, depending on who's in charge, it's a lot easier to freeze your digital account, your digital currency, if you will, than it is to freeze your own bank account or freeze your bank account. And believe me, these nations have done the freezing of the bank accounts, but it's easier to control one's digital currency, especially if it doesn't really exist materially. I mean, technically, a government with the wrong people in charge can make all of your finances disappear at the flick of the keyboard.
If you just really want to get a view of how evil this is.
All right, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but this could happen.
Well, I'm just going to read a paragraph out of my book. And Papadopoulos was under investigation they wanted him to wear a wire, and they had him entrapped as having knowledge of Russian collusion and all the other lies they were telling. So I wrote, given my personal experience with how the FBI worked with the Mueller prosecutors, I'm confident that Papadopoulos had agreed to flip and become an FBI informer. The FBI would have required him to return to London and Rome to meet with Mifsud again. He was another one of their intelligence agents who was planning information about Russian collusion. In that meeting, the FBI would have instructed Papadopoulos that his mission was to wear a wire so he could record Mifsud repeating the comments about the Russians being in possession of stolen emails that supposedly contained derogatory information about Hillary Clinton. The deep state, DOJ, and FBI were so outrageously over the cliff in their determination to frame Trump as a traitor that the FBI was willing to have an undercover informant, Papadopoulos, go back to Europe to record Mifsud, a Western intelligence asset, most likely working with the CIA, repeating on tape what he had allegedly told Papadopoulos on April 26, 2016. Obviously, the FBI could not prove that Mifsud had said anything of the kind, especially since Mifsud denied ever making the comments. The FBI agents knew that Precep and Peter Strzok, had been in London engineering the transfer of this downer confirmation of the Mifsud comments from the realm of intelligence gathering to the realm of official diplomatic communications between embassies. But to make their largely manufactured case believable in court, the FBI needed Papadopoulos to cooperate. That's how the FBI operated. Lying SOBs. Okay, Chris, thank you. And going to wrap it up. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. And join me in 2 Chronicles 7:14. We got to get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for letting this world get to such a point of darkness. The point of God's 5 stones, and please support us, is cast light into the darkness, get truth. And God will win. It's going to be a spiritual battle that we're fighting, and it certainly seems like end times. But I encourage everyone to understand that God does win in the end. Dr. Jerome Corsi, CorsiNation.com. We're doing podcasts every weekday. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.